I was just looking. I don't
Like this.
start flickering.
Cast them demons out your equipment, bro. It's flickering. My no.
Did it go away?
It went away. You had a shutter setup that wasn't good.
I I had a wet.
Your shutter speed wasn't good.
Oh,
Your white balance is still bad, but
I
your
just
white.
missed the 70s, and so I look like that 70s show.
You sure do. Oh my goodness, you do. Okay. Do you know what I sent you yesterday?
Uh, the the Drake stuff.
Oh my goodness. He's done.
He's done. I was laughing. Either that, or he's gonna have to lean into the other half of his. Um,
How? How, Jason?
get back in the Disney Channel.
Oh, brutal.
Yeah, that was. They just decided, but here's what I can't tell is it the same way like nobody wants to touch P Diddy right now, or is it
No, this is different than Diddy.
because this is you got whooped in the beef? I was
I
trying to
don't even.
explain to my kids the difference between beefs now and beefs then. It was
Well, explain it. I think that's a good thing. Explain the difference, because
well,
I've been trying to figure that out too.
because beefs back in the day were like you came into my neighborhood, now I'm gonna sleep with your girl and your mama's fat and I'm gonna come by with a shotgun and blow your head off and you better look out. Now beefs are I've seen your arrest record. You got uh you got put in jail for domestic abuse. Oh yeah? Well, you went to a Diddy party. I know you're a pedophile. back back then it was threats to break the law at you. Now it is exposing the laws you've broken. I mean, imagine somebody trying to drop that kind of beef on Easy E, and he's like, "What's the thing that finally dropped a beef on Easy E was AIDS. That was the only thing that could stop Easy E. Everybody knew what was going on, and he wasn't hiding anything. Now it's the threat is I'm going to let everybody know you've broken the law. I'm going to let everybody know you're not a good person. Back then, a beef was I'm not a good person. Look out. Now it's look out. I'm going to tell everybody you're not a good person.
I have been surprised. Like, I don't think the beef back in the day would have been like, "You ain't been a good father."
Right? Exactly.
Oh, did he just say that about him? He just said he wasn't a good dad. Tupac's not a good daddy. What?
You're like,
Oh my goodness, Biggie won.
back then it was because Biggie was like, I got kids all across the state that I don't know about. That's what it's like.
Like you had for real though. I mean, I guess you're making a good point. There was this point where it's like, I got hoes in different area codes, and now it's like you got hoes in different area codes. Shame on you.
Yeah, I know. So I don't know if that's just because hip hop grew up or
Well, okay, it was getting pretty violent. Although it's starting to seem like something's coming of this, so the violence
well,
isn't gone.
I still don't. Do you know what happened at Drake's house? I watched the video and I
Did
don't
you?
think
I haven't seen the video.
Yeah,
I haven't seen the video.
it's just looks like maybe somebody shot up his front door.
How?
I don't know.
How
I
does
get
Drake get his front door shot? How does in Canada?
this is the thing. I have no idea. I can't seem to get any information other than police are surrounding Drake's house, and
I don't
some.
trust it.
Yeah, I don't either.
I
I mean,
don't
my
trust
first
it.
thought was, "Uh oh, he's getting diddied," but then it didn't seem like that was it. I don't know.
He's getting diddied. What does that even? I don't know what you mean by that. There's a lot of meanings that can happen by he's getting diddied. I just want
Difference
you to.
getting diddied is when the FBI shows up at your house. Getting diddled is when P Diddy shows up at your house.
I didn't laugh at that. I did not laugh at that. That's wrong. Okay, the couple. Okay, here's the weirdest. I feel like we're doing like evangelical light preacher stuff, but I don't. I think this is important in one sense. I don't even know. What did you want to talk about today? Did you have something you wanted to talk about today? Because I really didn't care what you wanted to talk about today, but I kind of want to know a little bit what you want to talk
No,
about today.
I figured you'd bring the topic this time.
Oh, well, this time.
It's nothing.
Well,
nothing I'm upset about this week. Not like last week.
I don't think you got over. I don't think you got over last week. I still think you're upset. But here's the deal. Me and my wife sat down and went through all of the beef from Drake and Kendrick. I have to say, if there's a winner between Drake and Kendrick, it's J. Cole.
Yeah, I had the same thing. That's the same thing. I said almost the same thing to my kids yesterday.
If there was a winner between those two, J. Cole won.
Yeah.
And here's it. So, a couple things. I think there's a couple things going on to me with this. So me and my wife sat down. I was like, babe, we got to understand this. There's so much going on culturally, the references that are going to it. I'm seeing the memes pop up everywhere. Like, it is a buzz, right? And some of these things are, okay, here's what made us have to pay attention to it. Did you hear BBL Drizzy?
Yeah, just the one you sent to me. And people are already making covers.
Bro. BBL Drizzy. BBL Drizzy. I was like, no, it was bad. And so like that's what started. I was like, okay, I have to know now how we get to a rap battle where the producer comes in and drops one of the hardest diss tracks by not saying anything. So you know how that came along, right?
No.
So there's another site. I got my own conspiracy theories on this. I'm always got conspiracy theories. There's another site where a guy who is taking some of the stuff that Drake has said, or take some of the stuff that Kendrick has said, and has made like 70s type songs from them using. I'm guessing he uses AI or something like that. And has them sing it based on this artist. But so he's like he's taken some of the things that he said in Euphoria. Kendrick said Euphoria, some other things, and he's made songs out of them and put them online. And some of them have some numbers on them. And so, Drake has been talked about for getting BBLs, and there's been conspiracies, and everybody's talking about this or not, and how he lost weight and all this other stuff. And so this guy, so Kendrick basically kind of talks about it a little bit, and this guy goes and makes an old time 70s song about BBL Drizzy. And just it's hilarious. It's hilarious. The song is just hilarious. They're talking about a guy getting a BBL, and it seems hilarious now. But I was thinking about it. I don't think it's going to be hilarious in 10 years because I think we're about there. When you got rappers who are wearing black and red fingernail polish and purses and wearing dresses, and you see this in the hip hop culture, you see it in NBA culture, and you're like, what is going on? So BBLs aren't that far along. Actually, It's even worse than that. You see guys getting lace fronts. You know what a lace front is?
No, I don't.
Okay, all my white friends don't know what lace fronts are. Doggone. Some of the women should know what lace fronts are. Basically, it's like a wig.
Oh, okay.
But it's a really high-end wig. They have high-end versions. Are you Googling lace front right now?
Yep.
And so they really got popular in film and TV because people were using them through people's hair, right?
Okay.
And so this is lace that comes right to the edge of your scalp, right to your forehead line, and it blends right in with your skin with makeup, and nobody can tell. So most of the times when you wear wigs, if you part it, we all know that you got a wig on, right? Like, we can see. With lace fronts, it looks like it's coming directly from your scalp because the lace is so thin, you don't see it. I'm telling all the secrets. Oh my goodness, I'm going to get killed like Bruce Lee. So, so it became really popular in the black community and the higher end lace fronts. You can wear them for days, and it was really huge, and they still are huge. You can go to TikTok and see people selling multiple forms of lace fronts. It's crazy. And so basically, you can see this. Men started going into lace fronts early, and black barbershops are starting to bring them in a lot more, where guys can come in and get a faded type for lack of a toupee now, but they're more like lace front toupees they put on guys' head so they can get a fade. You've not seen this?
I haven't seen that. No.
Bro, it's on Insta. Like you can come in looking like me and leave faded up from the sides all the way to the top. They take the glue, they come up with a line of where your hairline is, and they take the glue and put it on your head, and then they take the hair and they lay it on the glue, and then they trim and fade you up. And then they have other ones that they could just lay over. They take your hair, they cut a little line around the top part of the bald spot, line it up, put the toupee right in here with the lace front set up. And you wouldn't know the difference. So guys are getting their hair done just like women. It's like just like women are doing. So I'm not surprised with the BBLs. I think they're on their way. I think they're coming. So he takes basically, I think in the first track that Drake responds back to Kendrick Lamar, he tells Metro Boomin to shut up and produce beats, shut up and make drums, something like that. And Metro Boomin took him at his word. He should have told him to rap.
Yeah.
And that track that he did became the thing that solidified Drake's failure.
Yeah.
It was over. And everybody has taken it and been like, dang, there's a song called BBL Drizzy. And what makes it so bad is that I think this song, I could be wrong, but I think the song's AI, which means, by the way, that because Drake came out with his diss track that used Tupac and used Snoop Dogg in one of his diss tracks, AI versions of them. So I think he wrote it or rapped it and then he ran it through AI. And so you go and bring up West Coast Tupac to help you battle against West Coast. That's a bad move. It was a bad move, especially if it didn't go hard. And so now they're using this AI on the back end. Talk about a chiasm to just BBL Drizzy. I can't get the song out of my head. BBL Drizzy. And it just stuck there. I'm thinking this nigga. I'm like, oh my goodness, stop, please. So, but here's something that I was thinking about. Two things I want to work on too. One of them is I'm watching people experience and engage social media different than us, Christians, secular people, the world.
Yeah.
They're using it differently than we are, and they're using it more vast than we are, and they're engaging with battle differently than we are too. So I want to talk about that. And the other thing is, that kind of encompasses all of it. Man, we have the same kind of beefs happening in evangelicalism. They're just different. And the way that, but it's like, I'm thinking to myself, in this case, I'm going to say it. I think Doug is Kendrick, and I think Drake is everybody else at evangelicalism. You got to think about this. I really do, bro. I straight up think that's the case. I think that there's a evangelical commercialized version of Christianity that people are used to. Ligon Duncan, what's his name? Kevin DeYoung, the Gospel Coalition, those guys over there, they're in the industry. They are Big Eva. Like, we have this massive chiasm between Big Eva and the average folks. And Big Eva isn't really necessarily a group of people. It's an idea, right? That has one focus. And Kendrick is over here on his conscious stuff, right? He's over here saying, what about the people? Like, he's from the ground up, and he's like, I don't care about the money. Like, I'm about the culture, right? Like, I'm about the people. I'm about how we get up out of here. Like, you don't have to agree with Kendrick Lamar and his worldview. I'm just telling you the two sides that are facing each other. And I looked at it and I thought about it for a second. I'm like, oh my goodness. They are going through the exact same thing internally. Who are we? Are they like us or are they not like us? Right? Like, he did a whole song not like us.
Yeah.
And people,
did you see the Mos Def interview about
the old
the old one?
Yeah.
So it's been rumbling for a while. It's been there. It just is now. It's like suddenly hit the mainstream.
You're talking about the one where Mos was like, yeah, I don't really think Kendrick's like that good.
No, where he says, I don't think Drake's real rap.
I'm sorry. Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
You're not Kendrick Drake.
Because it's not whether he's good or not, because he's like, yeah, he makes good pop songs. That's what he says. Like, he makes good pop songs, but it's not songs for us.
Right. Right.
So the idea that there's like the respectable outward facing, um you know, get respect from the other institutions of the world type of rap. And then there's Kendrick Lamar, who sells plenty. It's not like, or he's got plenty. It's not like um he's not getting money or something like that, but it is a completely different mindset.
So
This happened before though.
who?
Like, it's like Will Smith, and then
No, I don't know.
I mean, early on you had the rappers that were like uh palatable to the world, and then other rappers came along and they're like, no, this is what it's really like on the streets.
Right. They tried Will Smith. It didn't end well for him because Will was actually from the street.
Well, and he was actually talented and all that, and they
so is Drake though.
No, but what I mean is, when they came after Will, I don't think that they realized I think they thought he made money, and so he must not be real. And then he was actually real. I mean, he's stuck around and had a long-term career.
Okay, I'll give you some of that, but I think part of it what came with Will was that he wasn't cussing and he wasn't gangster, and he came out. So Will was in that cross between the bridge between gangster rap and hip hop, right? He's in between that middle.
Yeah.
And he wasn't gangster. He's like, parents just don't understand. Like, that was rapping about what was going on in your world, what was happening. And at that point, it's like, I can't get anywhere. I'm an adolescent teenager and my parents ain't listening to me and I need them to listen to me. Right. Summertime. You got a whole different kind of like era of rap that's changing in gangster rap. Right, gangster rap starts changing that whole vibe, and so Will Smith is in the middle of that, and people are still listening to that kind of music. Like, yeah, he ain't real. He talking about summertime, and parents just don't understand. But Will was still from West Philadelphia. He was born and raised on the playground. Is where he spent most of his days. Chilling out, maxing, and kind of relaxing all cool. And he was shooting some b-ball outside of school. And then there was a couple of guys who were up to no good. They started making trouble in his neighborhood.
Yeah.
He got into a fight and his mom got scared. She said, you're moving with your auntie and your uncle in Bel Air. So he's like, Will, he still was. Yeah. So I don't think this is different because Drake, to at least the way it's been presented, Drake feels like a culture vulture to them.
Yes.
And that's different than Will to me. And I think so when Drake came out with his response to Kendrick, I was like, Drake thinks this is a friendly, social, public battle that we're going to exchange lyrics and have some sort of rule, right? It's going to be a gentleman war. It's going to be a gentleman environment, right? He's like, that's what it's going to be. Because at the end of what he got done saying, he was like, all right, Kendrick, we waiting for you now.
and he didn't realize that there was blood in the water, and Kendrick was a shark.
I went back and listened to J. Cole's verse that he responded to Kendrick. And I think J. Cole woke up after he did that and he was like, you know what? I don't have that anymore. I don't have whatever that is.
He's like, my therapy's been working.
Whatever is F the big three, it's just big me. I don't have that anymore. Whatever that is, I like my suburban environment and the culture that I live. I like it. I'm happy. I don't need to fight this anymore. And he's like, he tried it and he was like, this only goes one way. And so the only way to win this game is to not play it at all, because that dude is hungry. And I'm not that kind of hungry anymore. Right? I'm just not. And everybody knows Kendrick's on a different hungry kind of level. Drake ain't there either.
Yeah.
And here's something. Oh man, this is okay. This is just where I'm at. I'm just talking. Everybody, I don't care who you are, if you're a company, if you're an individual, if you're trying to, everybody's in the social media game one way or another. Everybody is in the market to communicate. That's where we're at. And part of what I've seen with Kendrick Lamar is he out communicated. He performed better and out communicated Drake. And he has been slowly chipping away at market capital that Drake has had, because there's no way that a guy who's released 4 albums over 12 years should be able to do this to you.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's just no way. And Drake has gotten comfortable thinking that the old world that we used to live in is the same, where you still have the same sort of capital that you once had in this game. Because I was going back, this goes back to 2011. By the way, we're basically almost 12 years later than that. So the game and the social media and the world, when you had diss tracks back in the day, you didn't have a social media that hyped it up so much that it became a cultural phenom. Overnight, right?
Yeah.
You didn't have anybody else really making side tracks and hyping it up. And this is what I mean by, and this is where I want to go to. Like, I think that the world, and this is really interesting to me, they're experiencing what's going on differently than we are. I'm watching the fallout and the fighting, and I'm observing everything, but the people are like really enjoying the conversation to the point that they're having observation parties and they're having viewing parties, and they're waiting for the next shoe to drop on, like, oh my goodness. And then everybody, so you know how we used to go and play a song in the car and we listen to it together and we'd be with all our friends and we'd be like, oh snap. And there'd be the whole, that hasn't gone away. It's just happened now on a different environment. And we aren't a part of that anymore.
Who's the we?
Christians.
Old people? Okay.
Maybe old people, but there isn't, like, at least not.
Yeah. I think I know why, though. Because what I think that the church has the same thing that's happened to Drake has actually happened to the church, in that the middle class believes that value and safety is in money, right? Is in money and is in space, right? It's suburbanized. And I think the church, for the most part, has been suburbanized. Outside of the suburban areas, though, the commodity is respect. The safety is respect, right? So it's a communal safety.
Okay, start that over again. I got to really track with this. Okay,
so when you get out into, I've been thinking a lot about this, because did you see the guy that at Congress that was talking about how he doesn't understand why people just don't work harder and achieve the American dream? He's talking about immigration and illegal immigration, and we don't do these things anymore. And then he says, where did the people go that just work hard and achieve the American dream? And I thought, okay, so even though we might agree on the problem, right, is that immigration is illegal, the legal version of immigration is not being employed. We've got the breakdown of borders and responsibility and all that. All right. As soon as he says just work harder and achieve the American dream, you realize, oh, he's got his version of the or not his version, the traditional version of the American dream, or the one that's being pitched everywhere right now, has been suburbanized, where it's really all about me getting my space that I can control the way I want, and keeping everybody else at a distance, right? Because my safety comes from me owning my space, owning my place, and having the money that I need to to be able to do what I want. Well, the commodity that the entire populist uprising, the commodity in urban areas, the commodity in poor areas, and the commodity amongst the very wealthy is respect. It and I think that this is one of the reasons that you've got the deep connection between hip hop and like the samurai hip hop and kung fu. You know, is you've got this. They both run on the same social commodity. They both run on respect. That's why it's called a diss track, right? Because it's disrespect, right? So, and I think Drake, what's happened to Drake is he made his money, he got his space, and he was like, "Look, I am now safe at this point. I'm safe."
That's why you preaching about Big Eva though. Come on now.
But that's what I mean. It's the same thing that the church is happening in the church right now, and it's why the church is missing its opportunity with blue collar folks. It's missing its opportunity in the urban areas, right? Because it's it looks at it and it says, you know what, you guys need to learn to turn the other cheek. But turn the other cheek has to do with government oppression first and foremost, right? And then secondarily, you've got this issue with not understanding what's going on, and so then coming in and being incredibly offensive because you're not showing the kind of respect or not expecting the kind of respect either, right? So that men, how men deal with one another, and so you know, you think of like in an Asian culture, right, where somebody back in say World War II, we didn't understand the way that somebody that does something that loses them respect and then commits kamikaze suicide, something like that, right?
Yeah, that's been hard to understand. Yeah,
we can't wrap our heads around that because we think, what's the deal? You can just win your respect back. But if you live in a society where respect is the primary social commodity, then you can't, right? There's you and that's just class-based societies are like that. Any sort of society where you need the entire community to survive is like that. But we have tried to through technology and through just an enormous amount of general wealth, we have the illusion that we can actually do these things by ourselves, so that the rugged individualism leads to us to a, well, I don't care if I have your respect or not, I've got my money. But in societies where everybody's on the edge, you need one another, right? And the church traditionally has been that, when we've understood that, but we've been suburbanized in the church, and this is why the community is so hard to build in the church, because people close to you are a threat because they're going to need you, and they're going to need my help, and me helping you is a threat to my safety. So it's I mean, I think it's the same reason the patriarchal movement is growing, because it's the you know, dwarves are for the dwarves mentality. I'm gonna get myself in trouble, but it's it's the, hey, leave me alone and I will take care of this business, right? That mentality is it's flattering, it's self-flattering to think that, you know, we can do that, but I don't think it's realistic. I just did the same thing that Lig and Duncan did by dropping a group, but I'd be happy to talk to any patriarchalists.
Well, I don't
talk about this, but
I don't think you did the same thing Lig and Duncan did though, because Lig and Duncan was trying to do, in one sense or another, like make a bifurcation between us and them.
Right, because which I wouldn't want to do at all.
No.
I feel like there's these conversations. So you've got this is,
Oh, wait, this is juicy. Juicy. What are you about to say?
I'm trying to make sure to say it in the right way. So
We'll figure it out. Let's just say it.
we'll figure it out. Well, no, this is so because you see this growing um this growing individualism that's where you're looking for how can I make my uh how can I make my jurisdiction the primary jurisdiction? How can I raise my jurisdiction because that's what is going to make me safe, right? Um I
What do
was
you
just
mean by my jurisdiction?
so well whoever it is, wherever it is, right? You have, let's say, um you know you've got let's say, just you're a husband, or
Mm-hmm.
husband and father, right? So my where you say, well, I need to control, in order to get the blessing of God, I need to control my wife and kids, right? I need to be the one who makes every decision for them, and any other jurisdictional claim needs to come through me, right? And I'm going to be the border. Uh, so you've got my jurisdiction, and so
Wait, that's not true? Are you looking at me
you're
like that?
because I know you're a sphere sovereignty guy.
Okay.
This is sphere sovereignty stuff, right?
Okay.
So you've got your kids, but who else has jurisdiction over your kids?
The church.
The church,
Yep. Civil magistrates up to a
civil
point. Yeah.
magistrates, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So but when you say to a point, it's not the it's the jurisdictions, you are not um the jurisdiction over the person is not to a point, right? The jurisdiction over the person, their powers are supposed to be limited, but not their jurisdiction, right? So um
Oh, that's interesting.
right, so it's not as if they get part of the person and I get part of the person or something like that, right? It's if if some sort of coercive force needs to be applied, uh then we need the state, right? The family
And at
has
that point, they don't have a like, oh, you get to have a 75% vote on whether or not we. No, they actually.
yeah
Right. So this goes the same way too. If it's like dad needs to spank his kid, we don't say, well, how much of a vote does a civil magistrate get? Yeah. See,
yeah
the, even Facebook likes what I'm doing, and then
yeah, exactly.
Google's like, yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
right. So yeah, it's the same sort of thing. So
I see what you're
if
saying.
if you're, so you've got the dad is making discipline decisions. Mom and dad are making economic discipline, wisdom, all sorts of decisions like that. But let's say there's church discipline that needs to happen, right? You don't bring the parents in and let them um, say, well, here's my 17-year-old is um, he's out stealing cars, and at the theft and the restoration need to be dealt with by the civil magistrate. The spiritual implications and any sort of church discipline and access to the sacrament needs to be dealt with by the church, and the discipline and probably the responsibility. It's going to be tough because you're going to have to, the state's going to be making a decision about who's financially responsible for the to reimburse what's been stolen, because if they're 17, say. But those overlapping jurisdictions have to do with are all completely overlapping over the whole person. right? But then their powers are limited. So it's, you really don't have um, a division within the person, and if you have the different, statism is when the state tries to extend its powers over all the jurisdictions, right? It believes that its power pushes out or is primary in all the other jurisdictions. If they
That's where
agree
we're at
with them,
now. Yep.
the jurisdictions are no longer primary. Well, the proper response isn't in now. The proper response isn't the state has no jurisdiction, right? Anarchism is, there's a lot of anarchists. It's becoming a
Surprising. That's a
popular,
thing.
growing thing, and I understand why. But it's not even an overreaction. I think it's a reaction to statism that says, but it's a reaction in the same sort of way that you think of jurisdictions like, um, like beach balls. If you're going to fit 3 beach balls in the trunk of your car, you got to pop one. But it's, they don't fit like, it doesn't work like that. They can overlap over the same space, and that's really what the biblical understanding. I believe the biblical understanding is that. So what we had, but a statist is always going to say, no, your attempt at an overlapping jurisdiction is actually an attempt to push out our jurisdiction, and so we're going to pop your beach ball. So it makes sense so being accused of being an anarchist is not the same thing as actually being an anarchist. But what a lot of the kind of libertarian anarchist movement hasn't actually shifted its metaphysic away from the statist metaphysic. They just disagree on which jurisdiction is ultimate and which jurisdictions only get a portion of the person. And so I think that's, I guess I would say that's the temptation in like a patriarchalist movement, also in a feminist movement, right? They're kind of they both of them. I think the question that needs to be asked is, am I reacting to statism because a patriarch is a civil position, and trying to take the civil position of patriarch on to the dad and give him the divine right of kings,
Do
I
you
think
think? Okay.
is the same sort of thing as statism. But now I don't think everybody that uses the term patriarch is thinking
Burn him, burn him,
yeah.
burn him, burn him. Sorry, I was just getting started before they did.
Get started, yeah. But
are you Kendrick or Drake in this one? You better.
dude, I'm Kendrick.
Hey, okay, real quick before we move on, who do you think
feminists are Drake? So
okay,
no, I'm J. Cole. That's the reality.
J. Cole won. Okay, here's a question in that. Reactionary movements usually exist because there really was an area in which people were not fulfilling.
Yep.
Dropping the ball in. And so people are trying to backfill what it is they saw they lost.
Yeah.
And so when I see most guys who are a part of the patriarchy movement, they're not arguing necessarily. I don't know anybody who really is arguing for a civil order within their home as much as they're arguing for a hierarchical structure of humanity.
I do think that is I think that's the heart of the patriarchy movement, right? And on a good right. So, but I think that this is where you have to stop and say, what, it's not enough to say we're against that. We have to start saying, what are we arguing for?
I think they're doing that.
And very often when they start describing what they're arguing for, I think that they haven't actually shifted to a a different metaphysic than the modernist metaphysic. They've just
That's
shifted
fair.
which jurisdiction they think is primary, but there isn't a primary jurisdiction. You don't have a primary jurisdiction, right?
Okay.
You
Can I argue with that a little bit? Because I think I
Mhm.
agree with you. I think I agree with you. But maybe not primary, but can we argue more essential?
I don't think you can. I
Um,
I I
I
think
can.
you
I
I
think I
mean,
can.
I
And you poke
yeah,
holes in it.
yeah, okay, you go for it.
You don't have babies, you don't have civil magistrates. You don't have babies, you don't have parishioners, you don't have elders, you don't have anything. You don't have a home, you have nothing. So I think like the core structure at least comes from that. And because all the qualifications for any one of those offices has to come out of the home.
So, but this, so this is the reason that all of the statist, um, is the anti-statist sci-fi from the 40s to the 70s
Uh-huh.
were all basically said, look at what if technology took over reproduction. The
Mhm.
state's technology took over reproduction, right? So
Yep. Yep.
so
We're still having that conversation though.
we are, yeah. And I think that was it's one of the most terrifying um aspects of the whole, that the it started in the golden age sci-fi when they were still optimistic, but they said, look out for this problem, right? But then you have all of the people come in and say, I don't think we can be actually optimistic about. I think we need to be a little more pessimistic about the growing of this state authority. Uh, and so, technologically speaking, there is a push, I think, to replace the family as the reproductive
Mm-hmm.
source of new people, right? So, um, and which is evil. So I think you're right in the sense that they all depend upon one another.
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh, because you see when safety in goes down, birth rates go down, right? When in the middle of a war, birth rates go down. In when crime goes up, birth rates go down. When the economy um, is tinkered with by the state, birth rates go down. When the economy is given freedom, birth rates go up. When peace is established, birth rates go up. Right. So I think that there's an interdependency of the three primary jurisdictions.
I'm not arguing against that. I just think that one feeds the other, which gives it a importance that I don't think you can. So, like, if you have a problem child, there's a problem with the family because they can't kill that child. They don't have any authority to do that, right? So, if he
Right.
becomes a problem to society and we have a thief and a robber, it's like you can't. The family isn't supposed to be passing a judgment and execute him for killing another person. So, they have to have and right. So they're in trouble as much as everybody else. But there's no way for the state or the church to get people apart from the family, and they kind of need those for all of them to do their jobs. So I'm not in one sense they all protect each other, they all feed off of each other, they all are essential to each other. And yet I think there's still a pretty strong emphasis that I think needs to be put on the family, but only because we don't have a good society or church apart from it.
That that is, I do think that's true in the, but I don't think, I mean, you can get more people without marriage. I mean, it's actually possible. I don't think you get good people without it. Right? Is like people can be born out of wedlock and all of that. So I don't think Um,
And the
so I
church has a way to convert those people,
right,
right?
but so
But when it
so
converts them, it's only going to convert them to what we need for a good society anyway.
yes, I think so. So um,
Are we arguing about six and half a dozen? Are we
I
six of one,
no,
half a dozen of the other?
I think I'm talking about uh metaphysics, and you're talking about a historical the historical actions of different
Oh,
groups. So
what are you saying metaphysically? And I'm not engaging in that. What is it?
so when I say primary, um, I'm talking about the uh, definitional. You so when you say that when so in Colossians, for example, when it says that um, Christ is integration point, right? That everything
Yeah,
derives its meaning from Christ.
yeah.
Uh, then you say I think you do what you do say is Jesus is the primary human, right? All other humans derive their essence, or at least the definition of their essence, from
From
him as
Christ.
the
Yeah,
image of God, right? So
right.
when Adam was created and called the image of God, that's because in the triune eternal life coming beforehand, you had the second person of the Trinity who was the image of the Father
Right.
from all time. So then Jesus is incarnate as the image of God into the body, the body, the public body, the corporate body of the image of God, the created image of God. So Jesus is primary. So in a metaphysical discussion, when you say one is primary, that means the definition of the others are derived from their relationship
I
to
got you. I
the
got you.
primary. So,
Yeah.
um,
Right. Right.
so
I don't think I'm trying to say that.
yeah,
Right.
and so and the reason that's important. So, uh, and this is why I would say I'm not a libertarian, even though a lot of my positions end up lining up with libertarianism. The reason I'm not a libertarian is because they put the individual as the primary, the metaphysical primary, and all other units of society are derived from the will of the individual. So, um, and the and then you've got folks that would like to say that the church is the primary, um,
I see
and
what you're saying. Yeah.
all the other institutions exist exist from the will of the church or by permission of the church, or are an extension of the church.
Do you think that's the conversation that's happening inside of Christian nationalism?
I think this is a conversation that's not happening, but
No,
I
no,
think
that think that's the all the they have this hierarchy, or not just a hierarchy. They have this primary thing
so
set up that way. Yeah,
I think you've got you've got Christian, the nationalist, right, where the nationalism is primary. They tend to have the family unit as the primary, and then the Christian with this big nationalism where the Christian is primary, tends to put the church um or the individual, because in a Baptist setup, the individual is the primary unit of Christianity, and the church is then derivative, or is there's no real corporate reality. The and so there's no corporate justification. There's no corporate life. There's all of those are not real. They're voluntary by they're decided upon and built out of individual choices. And so the big C, all caps Christian nationalism, where um, tends to be either very individualistic or ecclesiocentric. I believe that the Trinity is primary, and the image of God, when we were created, had four different jurisdictional reflections of the Trinity. Um, the individual, Adam, is the image of God. Eve is the image of God. The family, Adam and Eve together, are the image of God. The church, Adam and Eve in relation to the garden and the sacraments, is the image of God. And then the civic structure, Adam as civic corporate representative of Eve, who is the entire population, right? So you've got is the image of God. So Adam as his relationship to Eve as congregation, with the sacramental trees at the center of the garden, is the image of God. And then Adam as king in relationship to subjects, Eve is the only subject at the time, but he's the representative of the entire human race as it is born into history, is the image of God as well. So the Trinity, I think, is the primary, and then we're all of the jurisdictions are derivational or derived from that primary. So but that's why I think the civic government is not established by the church. The civic government is established directly by God. And the Bible is clear about that, right? That he establishes kings and authorities. The family is not established by the church or by the state. The family is established directly by God. And
Real
that's
governments.
why,
Right.
yeah, real governments. That's why the state can't come in and say, well, okay, I'm going to give you permission to marry, right? When they developed the marriage license in order to stop interracial marriage, I think the government didn't have any right to do that, right? So when the same with and so you've got, because it's established directly by God. It also doesn't have the right to come in and say, oh, a man can marry a man now, right? Because it was established directly by God.
It actually has it has authority in that area though to punish those who don't do that, right?
Right, exactly.
Who don't, those who actually engage in homosexuality, the government actually has a responsibility and duty to engage with some sort of civil punishment there.
Right, civil penalties. I think it's got the coercive right to, for example, if you've got a husband that runs out on his family, it's got the coercive right to force him to take care of them, right? So, I mean, it's generally not wise to force him back into the home where he's going to be a threat, but to garner his paychecks and make him pay, and those sorts of things. The civil government has the right to do that. Now it should have to go through it should have to establish that it's just, establish that he has stolen from his family through lack of provision, and that he has to pay back what he's stolen, or pay back what he's currently stealing by refusing to provide, those sorts of things. But that's because it's jurisdictions over the same person, that makes sense. Right? So there's a checks and balances system. But it's the same when you say, well, what's primary? The judicial, the executive. The president's always arguing that the executive branch is primary. The Congress is always arguing that they're primary, unless they're running for president, or they're in the minority. Then they want the president to be primary. And then judicial activism is that argument that the judicial branch is primary, and that everything else. But that's not how checks and balances work, right? How checks and balances work is you've got three different branches of government that all have jurisdiction over the same people, and they're responsible for different aspects within their jurisdiction. So
help me with this. And the way that the world is arguing, the way that we're doing politics and everything right now, doesn't actually have that particular idea in mind. The cosmology is different, which is there's a primary and it sucks up the whole of the person. Or how would you say that?
Yeah, that there's a primary and everything else gets its permission
from the
from the
primary.
primary. Yeah. So
And
so
we believe that too, but we just make the primary Christ.
right. Yes, yes, absolutely. Right. So each of the none of these things is primary. The primary is the great white throne that Christ sits on.
Right.
Right. That's the primary. So, and that's the promise, is that David's throne will become primary over
Mm,
all thrones. That's that David will become David's seed will become the Prince of Peace. That Jesse's that Jesse uh that the stump of Jesse's lineage will grow to become the
right.
primary. So um and so each jurisdiction has a direct relationship to Christ, right? So it's actually the civil responsibility.
Everybody
It's
reports directly to the primary.
yeah. So the civic uh the civic authority has a responsibility to know his Bible well, right, and respond accordingly. That's um the church doesn't the church has a responsibility to disciple him. Um, but the he has a direct he responds to the Lord directly, um, because his authority is established out of the authority of Christ or by the authority of Christ. But it's the same with the Father. So the church is responsible to disciple fathers, but fathers have a responsibility to uh, to be a representative of Christ to their family. So they have to know Jesus and know what he's like. Uh, every authority is like that, right? The authority that a mom has over her children, right? Proverbs 31 is about this. The authority that a mom has over her children, um, by means of being the doorway and through which they came into the world. She has a responsibility to know Christ, be wise, and use that authority well, to represent Christ. Uh, and then a pastor off. It should be obvious, but a pastor's primary responsibility is to represent Christ to a people within his jurisdiction. Elders, deacons, all have that same responsibility. And then we individually have that responsibility within our individual jurisdictions. Um, and then you've got First Corinthians 11 even says that a subject within a covenant has the responsibility to represent Christ, because Christ is the subject of the Father, right? So uh, the primary responsibility that everybody has, is to Christ, to represent, because Jesus is the if you want to know what God is like, you look at Jesus. Jesus is the revelation of the triune God, and all of the different aspects of the image of God are rest in the primacy of the eternal triune life of God. Um, so I mean, this is why. So Jonathan Edwards talks about this as heaven being a world of love, right? Because heaven is the place where the triune God lives, and you have a direct relationship and whether or not this is exactly the best way to put it, I think it's really helpful, right? You have a direct relationship with God, and you no longer have a mediated relationship with God. And so you are brought into the world of love, right? The direct experience of love, because the triune life of God is eternally a life of self-giving love. And then that life in heaven, when we enter into, when we go to be with the Lord, after we die, that we enter into that eternal life of love. And in the meantime, we bring that particular expectation into the present by faith in the way that we treat one another around us, so that the the world around us is heavenized, which so the old word for this was the urinization. Now, unfortunately, that word doesn't work
That's not
anymore.
gonna work.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
but
not. That's not.
Uranus is the word for heaven. Now it's become as the name of a planet because we thought it was the planet furthest away. So we said that's the edge of heaven. We're going to call that planet Uranus, um, and
Oh,
then
how
we
small
found
humans think.
right, yeah, and then we found Neptune, and then we found anyway. So uh, and and then we found Pluto, and then then Pluto got done dirty. But the the whole idea was that the Christian life is about bringing the life of heaven into down to earth. That's what we pray for, that's how we act, and that the transformation of the world is the heavenization of everything. Right? And heaven is this world of love, world of fellowship, this world of self-giving love, and that is brought into the present when our jurisdiction comes to reflect more and more the Trinity, the triune life of God. So, um, and this, but this sort of, even just thinking about this sort of thing, what you realize is, oh man, we are power mongers. We have bought in to the power mongering metaphysic of the because we always want to say, well, who's in charge here? Or who's in charge of this jurisdiction? Who's in charge of this jurisdiction? And what we mean is who gets to tell people to do things they don't want to do. Right? That's our understanding of authority. The person that gets to tell people to do things they don't want to do, rather than the one who's responsible to turn this place into a reflection of heaven.
So people want to do things that they should do.
So that they want to do the things that they should do. Yeah, so that their loves are transformed. And it's but that it's a different mentality because you actually have to have a positive vision in that setting. You can't, it's not enough to know that the other guy's doing it wrong. You actually have to know what the right thing to do is. And I think that's what's so fundamentally different uh, about layered jurisdictions whose reality is whose primacy is the triune life of God, and that the triune life of God is revealed to us in the person of Jesus. Um, and this is something that I think that people say, yes, that's what I believe, but it's so I don't think so. Like when you talk about somebody that like I wouldn't want to say, oh, people that disagree with me, they don't believe in this, because this is kind of, I think, fundamental Nicene Christianity. But I think that it's easy to forget when you live in a Machiavellian setup that that as Christians we're going to constantly be countercultural right now. And it's just, we just have to accept it and say, no, we're going to be countercultural right now. And it's going to happen with people on the left. It's going to happen with people on the right. It's going to, I've had, it's people that just don't understand why when some Republican gets in charge and pushes back by doing the exact same thing that the left was doing, but doing it with things I like, that I'm like, well, actually, I'm still not okay with the overstepping of your jurisdiction just because you did the thing that I want. Like, that's not how it works. I think this was one of the things that was great about when Ron Paul was running, right? I'm not a libertarian, but I really like Ron Paul as a person and as a candidate. Even if there were times when I was like, oh, I'm not sure I'd buy into his political philosophy. But when somebody would ask him a question, what would you do as president in this situation? He says, well, the president doesn't have jurisdiction there. The Constitution would tell me that it would be my job as president to stay out of it. You're like, oh man, I love this guy. Because he actually really understood the limited government
Can I? Okay,
concept.
I got
So
it. I know, but it doesn't feel like Ron Paul did anything. Oh, I'm going to get killed for that one, right? Like I get, and I know he's done stuff. I know he did.
no,
Don't get me wrong, but what I mean is that when you have a society that lives the way that you've been describing we shouldn't be living, and that's the majority of society, even the guys who are on the side of good,
right.
then to try and communicate to these people in the way that I mean, and how many other Ron Pauls did we have? One, right? And trying to communicate to these people where we currently are, or not communicate to them and just be that way. It doesn't. How do you? Everybody, because part of what I think a lot of the people are trying to figure out who are in the CN movement and who are in the conservative side is, how do I get these people from where they are to where they need to be without playing with the same levers that everybody else is playing with?
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good question, and so I think it has to be a long game. And this is something that I think conservatives have forgotten the power of standing for righteousness even when you lose. Right. So I think Ron Paul, he stood up when nobody else was, and he lost.
Can I?
And I think that's when it's a generational game, you can look back and honor that. Now, I also think that setting things right. So I think a really good example of setting things right is going on in Argentina right now. Right, that you've got a guy who comes in, he just starts firing people.
I think you can get in trouble with that too. I mean,
I'm sure you can, but you're getting in trouble no matter what. So forcing them, if they're going to have to, spend another generation rebuilding to get back at you,
might as well
I
do.
think
Yeah,
you may as well do it, right? So
if you got cancer, cut it out. I get it. Yeah, I'm with that.
But I don't think there's an easy way. I don't think there's an easy or simple way out of our current situation. So I think that you've got to be willing to lose some battles at times in order to keep your integrity and keep your integrity in sometimes.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about this, and I don't know how I want to say it, so I'm just let it spill all out. I don't think we play the culture game very well.
I agree.
I think that being involved and interacting and engaging and having a Christian worldview, that I'll have to use Darren, because I don't know of a better example. So Darren Doan is very well known because of all the music videos he's done inside of the culture, right? Pop culture. Like, they know who he is, right? And everywhere that he's been involved in pop culture, he's been very, 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 very Christian. But he's been very, very, very engaged with it.
Yeah.
Right? And I've seen this kind of building that over COVID, it seems like because of that spark, that moment, a lot of people that we wouldn't think about change their positions drastically, because finally the Christian worldview made sense that they had been getting beat over the head about. Right? And you got guys, and you can say what you want to about them one way or another, but you look at who's that guy that just got baptized recently?
Russell Brand.
Like, there's something going on there with these guys. You know what I mean? And I'm looking at, this is why it's such a fight over the culture. And I say that, but I'm not really like, what I mean is that there isn't, when you're in front of people and you're communicating to them, Malcolm X had more power because of his communication with the people than the civil magistrate had over them. They weren't voting yet.
Right.
And that's what made them afraid. Right? Like, that's because they're and so what they couldn't stop with X and even Martin Luther King was their ability to communicate, and that's what they had to control. I don't think we communicate nearly as well or as much, or talk about things that are going on that might matter to people. I'm sure that some people are going to listen to this like, why? Yeah, I was thinking about my guy David David Fowler, and I was thinking like he's going to be listening to the beginning of this, and he's going to think, why in the world do I need to know about Kendrick Lamar and Drake's battle? Like, why does that even matter to me at all? Like, this is no touch point in this for me. And I'm listening to it myself, and I'm watching, and it's and there. I think we're making the point that the cultures and Christianity and the world is far more combined and touching than we even think or know. Like, you know what I mean? And we don't
Yeah.
even know that. And this is what was been James Lindsay too. James Lindsay is over here having a battle in atheism that we were having in Christianity, and he sees us on our side, and he's like, "Yo, don't go that way. Please, pastors, don't go woke." Like, I wanted to destroy you just a few years ago, and like this is the play I would run, but this play kills us all. This is the nuclear bomb for humanity if you go woke, okay? And so I don't want that. Richard Dawkins is saying the same thing.
Right.
Yo,
That was wild.
this is the nuclear bomb for humanity. And so now I have to identify as a cultural he would have never, I mean, he said this years ago, like I do like hymns and stuff like that. But now he's identifying much more with like, I'd rather have Christianity all over.
Yeah. He's like, hey, see y'all at church on Sunday, right?
I'll sing your hymns and hate your God. It's like, wow, it's interesting.
I think that like watching the Russell Brand one, I think is particularly interesting because his slow motion conversion has been in real time and in public, and it wasn't through conservatism. It was through New Age spiritualism. Because first he had to shift from being a materialist. He had to shift away from the materialism before he could even consider Christianity, right? And I think that's one of the things that so C.S. Lewis tracks his conversion in the exact same way. Of, well, first I had to drop my materialism because materialism is the fundamental assumption of the modern world. And so when you have the materialism, Christianity gets to exist as a subset of existentialism, but you don't have but what you don't have is the ability to enter into it as a religion. We watched Russell Brand shift into so first he just was convinced that there was a massive lie being told to him, and he shifted to, okay, there's a massive lie, and I think there is something bigger to this lie than simply some people trying to gain advantage in a materialistic universe. I think that there's evil. I think, in
Tucker
fact,
Carlson too. Yep.
it's not just simple human evil. I think there's a spiritual evil here.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I'm going to try and use spiritualism to gain power over this spiritual evil, and then New Age philosophy and meditation to gain power over this evil, because as soon as I start looking at it out there, I discover it's in me also. And so we watched that fail him, and then him suddenly run into Jesus, and think, well, he's making promises to be able to overcome the evil within me, and I haven't been able to. And so then he starts his interaction with Christ as almost as Jesus is a self-help guru. And it was a little wild to watch, because you think, not there yet, but now he's suddenly talking about Jesus, and then he's like, I'm getting baptized, I'm going all in on and but there's eh, but there's still something, there's still, you can still see that there's some kind of uh you know he still sees the world. He's a converted spiritualist, not a converted materialist, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So and so that, and which I think what's hard is like spiritualism is closer to Christianity, um but it's still a power game. And so that's what needs to be, that's what sanctification is going to look like. But I've talked to a couple of people recently who got converted by through, they first switched into New Age before they became Christians, because materialism was obviously not, was failing them. And sometimes it was like, well, no, I started doing drugs and seeing demons, and I was like, ooh, materialism ain't true.
Mm.
So then they're like, maybe I can keep these demons at bay by means of getting a stronger demon for myself through spiritualism. And that didn't work. And then they're like, oh yeah, only Jesus can keep these demons at bay. So like literal actual demons. So I think that's I think we're going to see more of that as the demonic realm ceases to be bound to its position by means of the preaching of the gospel and the practice of the sacraments, which is how the church historically has kept demons at bay. I think now we're running into a place where the church has stopped doing those things, so the demons are like, oh wait, I can come back in, all right, here I come. So they're gonna be, I think they're flooding in all around us. And
what other things are you taking away from? It's weird that we're even having it. Somebody said on Twitter, is like, you guys better talk about the Drake Kendrick beef. That's kind of weird. What other things though, when you start looking at that situation, do you think we have parallels? That's one thing I want to say. Go ahead.
Oh, well, I think one of them is Drake looks like a Democrat, and Kendrick looks like the new populist Trump supporter. Definitely. I think I've seen that parallel.
How?
I think Drake is trying to rest on his position in the system, assuming, hey, the system's working, it's going to be good, and here I got my spot, and hey, let's have a fun argument about who gets what spot in the system. And Kendrick is like, I got matches and I got gasoline. I say we burn this thing down. Right? Kendrick is a populist in that sense, where he's like, I'm bringing the crowds. I don't need Drake needs the system to continue. He needs the radio system. He needs the whole system. It has been the means of his elevation. We've talked for a while. I'd never thought Drake was as talented. As so super talented. I think he came up through the Disney Channel for a reason. And I think he was elevated to his spot by means of the system, because he was like, yeah, I'll play along. Sure.
Why you sound like Kendrick Lamar right now, bro?
I'm
this
totally
is so
black.
crazy.
I'm totally black, right?
Yo,
you want me to rap and dance? Oh, okay, I can do that. And the system elevated him, and Kendrick's like, except I got the people. I don't need your system. So I think there's a populist aspect to all of this, and Drake had no idea it was coming.
No,
he had no idea what was going on. And
this is my point. Go ahead.
Yeah. So this, I mean, the names that everybody's calling him, it's the equivalent of a bunch of people that are like Sleepy Joe. That's funny.
So the blindness of Drake to see this, I think the Christians are in the same spot as it relates to social media and the internet. Our lack of ability to communicate in these environments well and understand how to use these platforms well is the market share of our worldview being taken away from us. Right? So we act as if billboards and print is still at a major play. We act as if magazines are still a major play. We act as if radio is still at a major play. We act as if, TV is still major. Think about it. One of the biggest conventions inside of Christian evangelicalism is NRB setup, right? Like, and that's great. I think we still need hubs. I'm not saying anything about it. I'm just saying that's where we are.
But at NRB, everybody's getting together and talking about how we can get you onto midday TV channels.
It's not where the conversation is anymore, though.
No, I mean,
it's not where the conversation really is anymore.
That's what's playing at the retirement home.
Oh.
And I'm not saying that retired people at the retirement home don't still matter. Need Jesus.
And I'm not saying that they don't matter. There's not a form of authority there either. And I'm not. And man, my people are NRB, so don't hear me. I'm not saying anything bad about them. I'm saying something bad about us. NRB is only where they believe evangelicals are.
Yeah.
You gotta, you know what I'm saying? They are serving their audience. And so that's where they believe we are. And the whole world is having a conversation that we thought, and I've been talking about this, I think I might have told you about this too. We thought that this would go away like Drake did. We thought Kendrick wouldn't come for our bottom. We thought that nobody would ultimately come for our, this is the privilege of, this is, what does my guy say, white evangelicals or white evangelicals are the bulwark of American society or something like that. The lone bulwark of American society. That was William Wolfe.
Yeah. No, not William.
I'm sorry, Stephen Wolfe, not Stephen William. Wolfe, yeah. William would never say that, but he would agree with it. Love you too, William. But they never saw their bottom line being eaten away. They never saw it. They thought they were. Remember the
white evangelicals. Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
They never saw this coming. Never saw their bottom line really ultimately being eaten away. Though they were too big to fail in some senses. And evangelicalism, period. I don't care what brand of it, white, black, purple, or green, we've kind of annexed ourselves out a little corner and have been playing with where the conversation is, but not really.
Yeah.
And so the rest of the world is having this whole conversation and we're not engaging with it. And our market share is almost but gone. Almost but gone because we're not having the conversation in the public square. And we think that if we can get our hands on the politics, then we have our hands back on the public square. And we don't. That's not how it works. It's not how it works. Jesus transformed the whole society from being in the public square, talking to people. Right? Who is this man that's turned the world upside down? That's why the people in the positions of power were saying.
Right.
And so I'm watching these conversations go on. I'm watching, and the arrogance of evangelicals who've enjoyed we've developed something, so we've enjoyed the suburban lifestyle. We've become what I call suburban soft, so that now the market share is being taken away by people who are more hungrier for it. And it's like our hunger, I'm not trying to make our hunger for the market square. I want to make our hunger more for Christ, which encompasses the market square, right? That's right. That's his too. And and I don't think our hunger for Christ has been as strong as it has been, because if it would have been, we would have been arguing for that space this whole time. Right. And so we have not engaged in this area. And all of a sudden, the whole secularist world has come up and eaten away at our market share.
Yeah.
And now we're trying to figure out how to get it back. And so we're going for the most powerful point that we can get to, which is in the political area, instead of going back and say, why don't we go back to the basics of where we actually get market share at that actually control that? The liberals have been fighting hardcore at the bottom line of the market share for a very, very long time. And they did something that we let go of, which was education. That's at the bottom of the barrel of all of this.
Yeah, kindergarten.
Kindergarten.
But I think that this is a big part of what Christ did when he turned the world upside down, um, he turned underground into the place of power, um, in a historical sense, and we have walked away from the underground, or avoided it, or we don't want. So, um, like, you see this, for example, with comedians. The only way, you can't go straight to a Netflix special, right? The only way is to go to the underground and work on your comedy in the underground, and until you're good. But also, that's where you find out, that's actually I would rather have 100 underground comics, than a Netflix special, because that's actually where real significant influence and change is happening, but you can't see it right away, right? And so
And
we
actually, those guys
you
at
have
the
to.
top, are smart enough to know that that's where they better stay at, because they still go to the underground spots to stay hot.
Right, right. Well, and to work things out, I just listened to
Mm,
a great interview. uh oh man, who was it with? It was
that's Joe Rogan too. I mean, there's so much about that that's like,
yeah, I
that's
think it was a
juicy.
I think it was a maybe a Jim Gaffigan interview, and he was talking about how when he was younger, he met, Chris Rock at a club that he was gonna be playing, and Chris Rock came up and did 10 minutes, and he's like, and I watched him bomb for 9 minutes and then get 1 minute of laughter at the end. And he said, and I would have been dead afterwards. And he walked off. He was like, "Oh, hey man, I caught your show recently. I can't wait to see you again." He's like, "How you doing?" He was like, "I just watched him bomb for 9 minutes," and he came off just as cheerful as could be. And it was because he said, "I found a minute that was funny." Right?
Oh, that's
It's like,
hilarious.
this is what it takes, right?
Oh, that's hilarious.
You do this 60 times, you find you've got a special,
You got
right?
60 minutes.
You got 60 minutes.
You
He's
know,
like, but this
oh,
is what
can
it
I?
takes.
Oh,
And I was
Jason,
like, man, that's
that's so
brilliant.
brilliant.
So
It's so
brilliant.
funny because uh, you just gave me an argument. I'm not gonna say it here because, but boy, we mine. This is the same thing with mining for gold or for oil. We mined for 3 days and we don't strike oil, and we'll strike oil on the fourth day, and it won't be as much as we might, but we found oil. We know where to double down on now, right? Where everybody else is like, well, look at the 3 days you didn't get nothing. You're like, but we struck oil. We're going to double down on this. And it just keeps building the more and more you do that. And it's like, there's some principles about God's world there. You don't get fruit from a seed immediately, right?
Right.
But there's like, oh, it's in the ground. We got it there. It's great. Oh, we're watering. Oh, we got a leaf. That's great. Like, and you just keep going until it produces something of immense value for you, and you can do it over and over again. There's so much of that. There's an argument that's usually made about quantity over quality, but if you're doing it just because you're doing a quantity issue, then you're missing the fact that you might have found some quality in the quantity. And then you start doubling down on, okay, that's quality. Okay, I'll keep more quality. And I've seen guys who do talk radio who've learned how to do this craft go through that process, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, what's that line that I can't remember who said, anything worth doing is worth doing it poorly?
Yeah. Chesterton.
Yeah, Chesterton. Like, and we've forgotten that. We want to be perfect right out the box. And it's like,
Right.
you're not always going to be perfect out the box. Well, you're not going to be. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
that's really good.
this is part of the reason that I finally was. I mean, I've been learning this from you now for years, and I'm finally at the point where it's like, okay, let's do it. So I started my Substack, and so I'm publishing my books a chapter at a time before they go through the
Mm,
final editing process. So they go through an edit, right? So there's no typos and stuff like that. Um, but what I usually do is I write the whole book and then I sit on it and then I edit it once and then I get feedback and I edit it again. And this is whether it's, non-fiction or fiction or whatever. This is how I've always written, because I don't want people to see the process. I want people to be like, whoa, this dude's just a great writer. He never has to go through the process, right? But that's just not true. And so you've finally convinced me that I need to be out there. So I started the Substack. So I'm just I just finished outlining last night. I finished outlining my book, The Mission of God for the Family, and I'm going to put out as a podcast first.
There you go.
Just one chapter at a time. I'm going to podcast it, and then take that podcast. I might put it into a book, but maybe it will exist instead as a podcast or an audio, or as a series of Substacks or whatever. And we need to talk. I have to figure out because this is what you've been working, how to monetize that, because I just still I haven't figured that out. But I've realized that I've got to get that all this stuff sitting on my computer and sitting in my head and doesn't help anyone. And so you've got to learn how to just put it out there. And I think Substack is the right social media for me, as I've worked through them all. But I'm 2 weeks in. I got my first Substack payment today, which is pretty exciting.
Oh, nice.
So got to, but I think that books aren't it anymore. That's not. I mean, I think they still need to be. I think it's the right way to collect at the end. It's always been the way you collect at the end, but now I think you have to do the actual first part in public, if you want to be of use to people generally, right? If you want to be a blessing to people generally, you have to kind of do the first part in public. So yeah, I mean, I set the podcast up last night, The Mission of God for the Family. And
you don't know how excited you just made me. When are you going to start recording that?
This afternoon. Got the first one ready to go.
Okay, so there isn't any. Oh man, I'm just going to give it all right now. The way things exist now, there isn't any so when you said, hey, I think I found the social media platform that's right for me, I just want to tell you, and you said Substack, but that's not true. All of them are right for you. You've just figured out how to Substack generates the rest of the content for the other platforms for you.
Exactly. Yeah. So because I'll still keep putting it out, but I figured out, because I have not figured out how to make Twitter work. But I think it's because it's I look at things and I'm like, your problem is 4 steps previous, right? So you've got an enthymeme error, as Aristotle calls it in his Rhetorica. Is an enthymeme error. So you got to back the truck up until you get, you took a wrong turn 3 turns earlier. You can't do that on Twitter. That's not a good place to work that through. Whereas Substack, I think it is the right kind of place to take 3 steps to go back 3 turns and say, hey, let's start at the Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
So the first one is the 3 spheres of the world.
You know what?
Family is born into and stuff like that.
So this is, I think my job and work here is done. This is the only reason I wanted to ever do Knox Unplugged. Seriously, that's not something I've hidden from you. That's been something the only reason we started doing Knox Unplugged was because I went back and had time to listen to your Westminster Confession of Funk. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is good stuff. And then I started calling and talking to you more. And then our conversations turned in from 30-minute conversations to hour-and-a-half conversations to 2-hour conversations, 2.5-hour conversations. And I was like, this is a lot of work not to be recording this. And since I'm going to talk to you anyway, might as well go ahead and, have this recorded and put it out. But the whole point was to try and generate some form of casing for you to be able to communicate that that the form was also digestible for the audience. And I think normal dialogue allowed that to happen, where now I think people really do trust and understand what you're saying, because we get a chance to have the dialogue. And the fact that you're starting a podcast and a Substack, I'm done. I don't need anything else to happen anymore. Like this is huge. And like, I'm really excited about that, because there's a wealth of content that's not being produced and made that we need to be making. And everybody thinks we have enough. And yet I keep telling them we don't have enough. We don't have enough. Think about it like this. Every human, and this is how you have to think about the social media stuff. Every human being is a value asset in some way. Every last one of them. They are the most valuable commodity on planet Earth, right? Human beings are. And human beings engaging with each other to be blessings for each other is happening in a lot of ways, a lot more than we can think or imagine, without the barriers of distance on the internet.
Right.
And this is what we're arguing against in so many ways. I can't believe how many people don't have a TikTok. Like, oh, China. I'm sorry, bro. You lost that one years ago. Your Apple phone is made in China. Well, I don't do Apple, I do Android. And that's better? Like, you ain't even got no security on your Android. Like, what are you talking about? Like, that's not, the people are coming up with reasons for not to, then none of them are real. None of them are real. They're all false. They're all false. Like, they're all false. And they're giving us a valid justification for why we're not engaging. And I think we got to blow that world up. I think we have to absolutely, it does my heart merry to see husbands posting about their wives on Mother's Day, and to see people post about their faithfulness of their grandmother on Mother's Day, right? And for us to start owning, two foolish rappers can get the eyeball of the world on them, right? Like, we got way better stuff. Way better things to talk about. Way more. We're just not doing it. We're like, oh, the algorithm. If you start writing in books, you're going to have to figure out a way to turn a phrase to get people to listen to you. When you start posting on social media, you're not doing anything different. You know what I mean? Like, you're not doing anything different. And now, the way that things are made, we can have people making a ton of money in different form of economics that we ever could before. And we're just, dude, it's not, okay, I don't know why I'm on this.
but I think that's the hard part, and that's the turn that I've got to figure out personally too, is how do you, how do you add add value to people's lives in such a way that they turn around and say, "Oh man, I'm happy to make you money, or happy to give you my attention," and then monetize their attention. I don't think so that you can continue adding more value to their life, right? Like that's a good thing, and that's what I haven't quite figured out how to.
Don't figure it out.
Corner.
No, don't even think about it. Don't. This is a great conversation. If we would have asked people who are in the industry, hey, do you think we should start a podcast where Christians talking about politics? Do you think that has any value if something's going to be made and people would buy into? They would say, no, don't do that. That's not. I know they would say that because I made a show with Todd Friel called Coexist, where Christian, a atheist, a Muslim, and a Jewish guy all fought about politics and worldview stuff.
Yeah.
Took it to Fox and all those guys and said, yeah, nobody wants to hear anybody argue. That would be the hottest show right now.
Right.
It would be the hottest show right now if it existed, and nobody wanted it. And so you can't. The only metric of if your stuff is good is whether or not you have an audience following you. And then if you don't, then it tells you, oh, nobody liked that. Okay, I need to either get better or get in front of more people. That's the only two options.
Right. And so, but how do you how to monetize an audience? That's the part that I feel like is a skill I don't have. So, I mean, I just ordered some books. That's how I solve my problems.
Well, you never have to monetize anything that's valuable to other people.
Okay.
You don't have to monetize it. It will monetize itself.
It will monetize itself. Okay.
That's the new world that we're in, right?
So
like
just keep building it out.
When you make something that is a blessing for other people and they want it, the economic realities and the structure hasn't changed at all. People, when something is made that is valuable and they can't get that anymore, or they need that as a part of they will say, I need this to exist. I have to have this to exist because of what it does for me, right? And how much of a blessing it is for me. There are a few shows that I feel that way about, where I need this to exist. There's softwares that are so valuable to me. They gave me a free try and they became valuable to me to the point where I'm like, woof, I wonder what the pro version of this is.
Yeah.
Right. But I found out by using it for free, I don't use it that much.
Right.
Right. And so the things that are of value, the guys who have Substacks that are great in that work, they get lots of money.
Yeah.
Because they're valuable. The guys who aggregate best on X, they're valuable. I got to see their tweets first, right? There's a point to, and so part of people, it's like, oh, there's just so much. The stuff that's good, like everything else, rises to the top. But even the things that shoot 50% of the way have the ability to produce some of the incomes that we have, where people are working 8 hours a day at a 50%, not even that, a 10% mark of the margin, right? I shouldn't be able to live off of what I do with Cross-Politic.
Yeah.
When 10, 15 years ago, that wasn't a real market of a podcast.
Yeah.
Right. But because of the value that it brings and the value that we keep trying to add for our listeners, people decide, it's the same way. And but the way that people have listened to this podcast and say, oh man, I want to sign up for that class you're going to do for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Well, there's been enough of a blessing given to them where they're like, what's next level? Is there a next level? Or I need some one-on-one time to really work this out for me. Right.
Yeah.
And so I don't think you're going to, as you begin to engage, and the more value that you bring every time you write to the people who are listening to you or find you, two things will happen. People will talk about you because they love, this is one of the best positions I've ever seen before. You got to go do it. You got to go to this guy's Substack. And then they'll say, oh, I want him to only be writing for me. I don't want him splitting his time thinking about I want him to be writing full time. He deserves it. Right? Like, Tucker Carlson leaves Fox and people are like signing up on it. I'll sign up. As soon as he left and he gave me the chance to sign up for his Tucker Carlson network, as soon as I had the link, I signed up. Wasn't even a question, because I knew the value that he's been adding for what he does, and I need him to exist, right? Like, that's important. And so this new covenant world that I like to call it operates in some of the same principles, just it doesn't have fluff as much anymore, like at the top, right? There's fluff all in the middle, but the stuff of value gets picked out really quickly.
Yeah.
It's stuff of value. With Anthony, what's that guy's name who did What the World's Coming To? Anthony.
Oh, yeah.
Oliver
Richmond,
Anthony.
North of Richmond.
Yes. They found it. Just went out there amongst all of the other garbage.
And rose to the top, yeah.
Without a label, without a marketing campaign, without a strategy. He did what he felt, what he loved, and it resonated. And that's the kind of world we're living in. Like, so that's why I'm like, let's me and you talk about the things that we love, the things that we care about. And it'll be messy because some people don't care about rap and what's going on with that.
Right.
And yet we're not, and this is one of the most important things I think about marketing too. We're not just one thing. This is what you were talking about with the areas of, I'm connecting in multiple different areas of life and things I like. And all that is who I am. And we are not talking in a way that communicates to full humanity. And I see that a lot in the rest of the world. They actually are. We only talk about, if it's UFC, it's only UFC, but it's not UFC and Christianity. Those two don't mix.
Right.
Right. If it's politics, but it's not. It's starting to become that now because people see there's a lane for it. If it's art and Christianity. It's like, no, we're full persons. We have all kinds. If I want somebody to talk about their love for shoes, and this is what Dude Perfect did. You know what I mean? This is like, a lot of these influencers are doing this in a way. It's like, man, I like doing reviews, and they're killing it. And I'm like, I didn't know that I needed to go find all the sleep pods around the world and sleep in them at airports, but now I want to. Right? And so there's an amazing, beautiful world that God has made, and we should go experience it and tell people about how awesome it is. And we don't, right? We don't. And that's disappointing.
Right.
Because I'll say this and I'll shut up. So family member was at a party and there was some alcohol there. And they were trying to make the case that, hey, we should have some of this alcohol for the glory of God for this moment. It'd be perfect. And other family members wouldn't touch it. They're like, no. They even drink alcohol. But it's like, I'm done with that. It's like, yo, no, actually, this is the medicine God has given directly for this moment. You should take and partake and use it for his glory right now. And they rejected it because they didn't know how to use it properly. Right. And like, good. But boy, that's also bad. God has given you all sorts of things to enjoy, and part of your joy is limited because you don't know how. So then it's not like you don't say, it's like, oh, I'll never take part. No, it's like, Lord, help me to understand how to use everything in this world that you've given for good, for glory. Like, I know this is going to sound crazy. I'm going to take a lot of heat for it, but I would have no problem with Christians owning marijuana farms. Jason's like, ooh, I don't know about that. I don't know. When he says every herb is good for you,
right?
It's for your use.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's you'd. I think you would have to just figure out what's the proper use of it.
Of course, but we had to do that with do it alcohol too,
with everything. Yeah, for sure.
Do it everything. It's the rules apply across the board. The problem is that somehow we get to this part of and we're like, those rules. We don't know what the rules are anymore. What do you mean? You know what the rules are? You know exactly what the rules are. And I wonder, like, because we haven't been engaging, we're not finding good uses for things. And instead the world is finding like everything, like video and stuff. As soon as Betamax versus VHS, the reason we got VHS, which is a more horrible format, is because pornography.
Oh, is that what it was? I didn't know that. I have always wondered why VHS went out when Beta was
It's horrible.
Superior.
Yeah. Pornography drove the price down.
Was it cheaper? Was it cheaper to use? Is that what it was? Or
it was cheaper to use. And so it cost less because they were making more of them because pornography was used in that format. So they got to the market and they controlled the market because they were using it. OnlyFans. OnlyFans wasn't supposed to be a porn site.
Really?
It was only your fans. It was your fans want to see you, and it's like a Patreon. Only your fans come. And I think they're going to switch it up too, coming up pretty soon, and try and clean the porn off of there. But porn came to the platform and was like, yo, is this our break free from the industry moment? Let us take that.
Yeah.
And now OnlyFans means something different than OnlyFans.
Right.
So your fans who love what you do from somewhere else, you can bring them over here, and now you get paid for that platform. I think NFC or some other folks are using, fighters are using it too. So it's not just porn there, but that's who took over the platform. I'm telling you, there's that vacuum, and we think, oh, TikTok. Well, you ain't there, so guess what it's going to become?
Right. Yeah.
the proper use for this platform needs to be all platforms in one way or another. We got to figure out how to use it for the glory of God. And I know everybody's trying to says that, but I mean that for real. Like that's the new word. It's not going away. Social media and TikTok might go away. X might go away. Facebook might go away. MySpace went away. Goings away. Vines might come back, but it went away. Social media is not going away.
Yeah.
But we have a dispensation. I was talking about this before. We have a dispensational mindset that we're going to get raptured out of here and all this stuff will collapse and there's going to be doomsday and we won't even have electricity and power or internet anymore. It's not going away.
Yeah, I don't think that is happening for sure. So if the salt isn't there's two problems, because the salt not showing up to be salty is one problem, but then the salt having no savor, the salt having no saltiness is, I think, the other problem. So
yeah,
and when Jesus looks at the Pharisees and says the salt has no savor, I think they were plenty religious. So
yeah, that's right.
Figuring out how to also have, be salty to go before the Lord. When the salt was added to the sacrifices in the Old Testament, it was all done. It was all done in worship, and so I do think that the reason that we're also not salty is that the in-person worship of the Lord is often not done as well in the modern American church. It's bland. It's not done by faith. It's not. It's a
don't do that. Don't do that. Don't talk
historical.
Right at the end of the show, you can't do that. Can't do that. No, that is no. You're right. You're right. Because you know what though? Worship. The good part of the good news is that heaven and earth have been rejoined.
Yep.
Through Christ.
Yeah.
Right? And the earth has
Jesus
been heavenized.
Is Jacob's ladder.
Yes. And the earth is, and so somehow our worship has, so then worship, we can't do this. We'll be here forever.
We'll be. But I do think with unless we're ascending and descending on Christ, that it doesn't matter if we show up on social media consistently, because we're not going to be the salt that those platforms need.
Matter of fact, I'll say we won't, and we won't. We have, if we thought about social media the way that we think about missions, we would have a whole different concept about this. Think about this. If social media was a continent on the other side of Africa, we'd be there. But because of the way that we understand the gospel and its penetration in all nations, everywhere, all people, like, we haven't thought about it that way at all.
Right.
Which makes me think like our worship is not even thinking about the world that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so we're dropping the ball,
Yeah. I always, when Christians start showing up in mass in a particular place, I always think, well, that thing's dead.
Dang.
Because we show up at because once the world is moving on to something else, it leaves space behind it. And that's when we that space. So you see it in the movie theaters right now. Christians are finally getting into movie theater releases because there's space left over after the world has moved on to something else. I think we do that a lot. We move in as the world moves out. And I think that's just because we're the tail and not the head right now, which is the curse of not having faith.
Curses. Yeah.
So now there we. So, but I think you're right. It's time to get salty and jump into the fray.
strong worship produces strong culture, right? Like is that fair?
Yep.
It's always a worship problem. It's always a worship problem. I've been going through reading Bible again with my kids, going through it, and every doggone moral, civic, war, whatever it was, is always a worship problem. I mean, and it's funny that nobody talks about it like that. Like, and I think if they did think about it in that way, everybody would be post-millennial. That's why I don't think they think about that. Like when no one stops and says, "Oh no, borders overrun. Who screwed up worship?" Or, "Hey, why are we taxing so much? Who screwed up worship?" Why do we have abortion in the nation? Yo, somebody's screwing up worship. Who's playing with the worship around here? Nobody is flipping out over worship. Oh, I got to write that down. I'm stealing that. I got to steal that from myself.
Steal that from myself.
Yeah. I'm stealing it from myself. But that's real though.
It is. It is.
That's and every time I keep going back and I read the Bible, especially reading how God's working with his people, when Israel is losing the battle between Samuel and was it Eli and his, what was going on? What was the problem? And why did Israel lose the ark? Why did they lose the ability to protect themselves? It was like because of their priests weren't judging right. They had bad judges. They had bad worship. It's like, you're not disciplining your sons, Eli. You're going to die. They're going to die. Israel's going to be in a bad place, right? Like this is, and even when the reason they get Saul is because Samuel's sons are bad judges. Like worship, we're having a problem with. Like, it's like, oh, okay. Like, but we think that if we really knew how much worship affects our society, dude, we wouldn't have to talk to people about whether or not they need to come to church on Sunday. Because what we do is witchcraft. We think that we're going to select a person in political office and not have to fix worship and get the blessings of selecting that person into political office that comes from worship.
Yeah. We do, because I think we're
in trouble, man.
We're mechanistic statists at heart, and so we think, you know what, they're keeping the blessings back from me, and so we've got to force them to do things in order for the blessings to come to me. But there's nothing that can hold back God's hand of blessing. When
you can lose your chances to vote. Don't matter.
Yep.
You can be fresh out of slavery. Don't matter. Right? Like Israel was fresh out of slavery and everybody was afraid of them. When they got to Jericho, yo, we heard 20 years ago that y'all was coming. We were all scared. We heard about y'all. Yeah. Right? Like, and Israel was over there quaking.
Right. They were at the border saying like, hey, those guys are tall.
And why didn't worship? Once again, had it all backwards, feared the wrong thing, gave homage, put the pinch of incense on the wrong altars. Hey, yo, when you get into the land, don't forget to worship the true God.
Right.
Him, don't have no idols. Like you'll lose everything. Like it's always worship. It's always worship.
Always.
And man, we got to do a whole nother thing on that. The metaphysics of worship, bro.
Yeah, let's do it.
Next week, you want to start that one?
Let's do it.
Woo! All right, we got to go. That's good.